Well, hi there. This is Fan from Aborted, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2024 album review. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from the band Aborted entitled Vault of Horrors, which is out now through Nuclear Blast Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Aborted, they're a death metal band based out of Belgium, been around since 1995, so getting close to almost 30 years. And Aborted, for me, are one of my all-time favorite bands. Been a fan of them for pretty much about a decade. The first time I heard Aborted was back in 2014 when I heard their album, The Chronic Manifesto. And that was one of my favorite albums from that year. And I've dug all their other albums. And overall, this is the band's 12th album, I believe. And this follows up their previous album, which came out in 2021, called Mania Cult, which I thought was a pretty good album. But here we are with this new album. Does this album live up or exceed what Mania Cult has? In my honest opinion, it definitely has. I think the band stepped up the brutality a bit and the musicianship. And this album also has Aborted is known. They've had guest features from other artists. They had Sotiris from Septic Flesh. They had Joe from Fit for an Autopsy, Vincent Bennett from Acacia Strain. But this album, all 10 songs feature a guest appearance. Now, a lot of people would complain that having a guest feature, especially every song, would be kind of unnecessary. But I remember interviewing Jason from Injustice, and it would have to fit within the song, and just not have a specific part and just be that's it. It would have to find a way to have a perfect balance. But with this album, I think it definitely has all the guest appearances, which we'll talk about to each one in a little bit. But let's just talk about the production on here. Production on this album is fantastic. Everything is where it needs to be in that stuff. The vocals from Sven, I think Sven's vocals have really improved. His growls have gotten a lot more powerful, and just his highs sound more aggressive, and just his vocals sound really just fucking nasty. Guitar wise, Ian, and this is the first album with their new guitarist Dan, who's actually from Iceland. Both Dan and Ian both come up with some really great riffs, and just the soloing on here is fucking great. The bass on this album is pretty audible from my buddy Stefano, which is his last album with the band he recorded before he left the band. So the bass actually is pretty audible on this album compared to previous Aborted albums. Not to say that this wasn't on there, but I think it really just stands out and it sounds a little bit more punchier. And drumming wise, Ken Badine's drumming, his freaking blast beats are just it's all over the place. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Dreadbringer. Now, right from the get-go, it just explodes with some silly sick drumming, and like I mentioned before with Ken, he just has some really sick blast beats, and this is a speedy song. And this also has a guest feature from Ben Dewar from Shadow of Intent, who actually guested on the last album, Mania Cult, and his gutturals are just really in there, and just him and Sven's vocals just really great. And I think that Ben Dewar, in my opinion, is one of the best deathcore vocalists going right now. He's just fucking insane. Then we move on to Condemned to Rot. Now this song just keeps up the pace and the quality, sort of having that sort of horror movie be kind of imagery and inspiration, which is basically every song on here is based off a horror movie and stuff. And this song has a guest featuring Francesco Paoli from Flesh God Apocalypse, who they actually dropped the music video for this song today, and is absolutely kick-ass. And this song has some chunky, just chugging riffs, and especially with Francesco coming in here, giving his room to strut, especially during the pre-chorus refrains where his parts just feels like it's just written for him. And it just really fits well with the whole vibe of Condemned to Rot. Moving on to Brotherhood of Sleep, which features Johnny Chardulo of Angel Maker, who's one of the three guitarists and the lead vocalist of the band Carcosa. This song is pretty good. This song has a great display of screaming savagery, especially during the Annihilating Brotherhood of Sleep. And I think that's a really good song, and I know they're going to be on tour with Aborted and Archspire this summer, so I'm hoping they play the song live and Johnny goes up on stage and does his part. So I think that would be a pretty good song. Next up is Death Cult, which is the first single from Vault of Horrors. And this song has some raging drum work, some really sick guitar riffs, and some really great passages with Sven's like sick vocals, and has a great guest appearance from Alex Arian from Despised Icon, which really sort of like sweetens the whole thing up. It's just another sick song. And I think it's a great way to introduce this album, maybe with the first single. Moving on to Hellbound. Now this song features Matt McGatchy from Cryptopsy. Now this song has a lot more work than some of like the other guests that we've heard so far on this album, and there are some moments during this song where I feel like him and Sven are trying to like one up in terms of who could deliver the most vicious performance, but they both sound fucking sick, and it's a great way to end the first half of the album. And then going into the second half of the album with Insect Politics, which features my buddy Jason Evans from Ingested. Now right from the get-go, it just hits you in the face at 1,000,000 miles per hour. It's just a nice and grimy grindcore song, and it just has an adrenaline like a roller coaster. It's pretty much under 2 minutes, but this is a true ass speeder of a song with really rhythmically, it's just it's a really insane, and it's just another cloud pleaser of a song, and pretty much so far like one of my favorite songs from the new album. Moving on to the Golgothan. Now this features Hal Microteosis from the band Blasphemous. Now this song plays a more prominent part of like the atmosphere heavy churn, especially like the second half of the album, and the Golgothan, which has some really great guitar work from Dan and Ian, and I feel like the frenetic delivery ensues, and it's just one song that you just won't forget when you hear the song. Moving on to The Shape of Hate. Now this song features Ollie Ray Alien from Archspire here. Now this fits in like other tracks on the album, but the breakdowns on here are just they're too good to mention. And this is almost kind of like a calming melody that plays on top of the rhythm section after the second breakdown that really caught my eyes. And a really sick guitar solo on here, which really close out the track. And Archspire are going to be on the tour with Aborted in June. And like with Brotherhood of Sleep, I'm hoping this song was played live so that Ollie will come up on stage and do his part with Aborted. I'm really hoping so. Next up is Naturedom Delmento. Now this features David Simonik III of Signs of the Swarm. Now this song is largely buried between Sven's monstrous performance on the second to last song on here. Naturedom Delmento, which is just a really sick song, but I just feel like it could have made his presence on here. It's probably just like my least favorite. So then we close things out with Malevolent Haze. Now this features my buddy Ricky Hoover from Of Sulfur. Now this song, while not the best ender they've ever written, but I feel like it definitely establishes as one of the better closers in the band's catalog, because partially doing like with the more melodic sort of like build up, especially in the climax. And Ricky's part on here is just sort of a death metal machine right here in the middle, which in order to maximize its song's climactic sort of overall vibe with it. Now overall, Fall of Horrors by Aborted, a really good album. Some people would say that having too many guest appearances is unnecessary. I think it fits within the context of it. I think it can be done if it's done the right way. So if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give Vault of Horrors by Aborted a solid 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the new album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.